Howdy.
How y'all doing?
Doing well.
Good, good. Everybody, this is Austin. And
Hello,
Austin is
Austin.
our friends Travis and Robert.
Hey, Travis. Hey, Robert.
Good. That's a lot of books.
Yeah, we're in my office right now.
Yeah.
I wish I could say I've read them all, though. That's just for shame.
Yeah. Yeah. Robert has this fake stack of
Cool.
books to pretend like he's read lots of books too. This little minuscule. He usually props it up and on
Yeah,
his background he'll duplicate it to make it look like he's read more
well,
books
that's a
than
good
he has.
strategy.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, well, Travis and Robert, they're members of our church. So they are a fair bit more knowledgeable about the topics that we were talking about when we last saw you. So they should be able to answer your questions maybe a little bit better than we could. So that's why they're here.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, I appreciate it. Well, I appreciate you guys taking time to meet with me.
No,
Yeah,
no. Anytime they tell somebody has questions or concerns, we love to try to help out.
yeah. I don't know. Well, yeah. First, I just like to. Well, I'm Austin. Nice to meet you guys. Married to Katie. Got our first little baby on the way any day now. So I think I'm labeled as Baptist pastor, but yeah, I'm the college pastor over here at Ridgecrest Baptist Church in Springfield. Um, yeah, I'd love to. Well, first, I'd just love to hear a little bit more about like who you guys are and how you came to the LDS faith, and yeah,
Well, my name's Travis, and I was just born a member.
so born and raised LDS.
Yep.
Robert, same for you.
No, I was born and raised a Catholic, and while in Catholic seminary, I actually converted.
In Catholic seminary.
Yeah,
Wow, what was that like?
it was pretty interesting. They still let me have my degrees, so it's okay.
That's good. But probably not confirmed Catholic now.
Well, if you know anything about sacramental theology, I'm still a Catholic. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
Neat. So
How about
And you said
yourself?
that you're, oh, I'm
How did
sorry.
you become a Protestant?
yeah, I was not raised as a Christian. I was raised in Nashville, Tennessee area. I call it Southern churchianity, where we um, were familiar with somebody named Jesus. We read the nativity scene at Christmas Eve, but outside of that, we stopped going to church by the time I was in second grade. I don't really remember much of that, and my parents never really practiced faith, nor my grandparents. Never saw them praying, reading scripture. They didn't really ask me about any of that. As I got into high school, my friends, or middle school, high school, my friends started being involved in youth group activities, things like that, a lot of fun events, and they started to invite me to things. And so when I was 16, in between sophomore and junior year of high school, my friends invited me to a camp called Centrifuge, and so I went with the mentality of eating French fries, playing basketball, and meeting girls. And while there, as I was in worship service one night, just hanging out with everybody and music playing and people singing, praising God, yeah, I just looked around and realized, these people had something that I didn't have. And, these people had a authentic relationship with God, whereas I just kind of was, oh, I am a good kid. I, don't cuss, I don't drink, don't have sex, I realized that being a Christian meant more than just, following a list of rules. And so I gave my life to Jesus and said, whatever you've got plans, I'm trusting in you for my salvation. I'm trusting in you for your plans for my life. And ever since then, I've been walking with him and following him and learning more about what that means.
Oh, so what has you interested in the LDS faith?
Well, so when I was in undergrad, I majored in psychology, minored in philosophy. So yeah, I love honestly just this kind of comparative religion component of things of like I love learning and thinking critically about why do we believe the things that we believe. So as I was in college, I had these kind of crisis of faith moments like, man, what if everything I believe is a lie? And so really wanted to learn more about different faiths. And one of I've interacted with a lot of LDS members over the years, and had a lot of interesting conversations. And so I always want to think critically and consider other people's positions. I don't want to assume that I'm right. I want to make sure that I'm, learning more and thinking and hearing honestly from those other people and what they believe, and see if that might be something that makes more sense than what I think.
Oh, cool. So did you have any questions for us specifically about?
Yeah, I think probably, and again, I've talked to a lot of LDS people over the years, but I've gotten a kind of range of answers on some things. But I'd be curious, one thing that I think I've encountered in recent years that is kind of,
Just real quick, have you ever read the Book of Mormon?
yeah, I got one right here.
But
So this
have you
is
read it?
yeah, I wouldn't say I've read it cover to cover, but I've
About
definitely.
how much of it do you think you've read?
Oh gosh, I couldn't even begin to give you an approximation. Like just the Book of Mormon or Doctrine and Covenants, all of it.
No, just the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon's about 500 pages. About how many pages do you think you've read?
And I don't know. It could be anywhere from 10 to 50, not just reading straight from, but also quotations and Mormon doctrine from like McConkie. Is that his name?
Bruce R. McConkie.
Yes, yeah. Reading stuff like passages from him, that kind of thing. So
Okay.
I don't want to mislead you. I don't think I've read it cover to cover.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd be curious, like in your opinion, is the LDS Church a Christian church?
Yes, we would claim that we're the only true and living Christian church, or only true and living church on the face of the earth. Now, of course, that begs the question, like, how do you define Christian? And that can be either a very generic sense or a very specific sense, as
Yeah,
I'm
so
sure you're
Christian,
aware. But
yeah,
go
so
ahead,
Christian,
Thomas.
yeah, so in the general sense, yes, but typically when people ask us if we consider ourselves Christians, most Latter-day Saints would say yes, as Robert did, and that would be our understanding of it. But typically, I mean, if you're looking at Christian as a word with a definition and meaning, the definitions in the dictionary are incredibly broad. So people who accept and follow the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth or Jesus Christ without any specific identifiers as to what that means are considered Christians. But in the sense that most people who question us being Christian mean it because the way that they're defining it, it requires certain baggage or criteria. And if you don't believe these specific things, you're not a Christian. So if that's how they're defining it, then, and that's what Christian means, then no, we wouldn't be Christians in that sense. But in the sense that we believe we're the true followers of Jesus Christ, yes, we're Christians.
So maybe a better way to ask, or not a better way, like a kind of follow-up question would be like, take the Methodist Church. Like, is the Methodist Church a Christian church?
Again, in the general sense that Christian means somebody who follows Jesus Christ, yes.
Okay. So your answers to me indicate like kind of two things. Like you're saying, like, yeah, we have some shared understanding of Jesus of Nazareth and following him. But Robert, your answer was very specific on yes, but we're the only one and true Christian church.
Yeah.
So what for you is the differentiation of what does it mean to be the only one and true Christian church, whereas the Catholic, the Protestant, is not?
Yeah, sure. Like, because they're pretty broad traditions, you want to focus specifically on one specific tradition as a comparison?
Sure, take the Protestant tradition.
Armenian or Reformed?
I'm fine either way.
Which one of you?
Oh, I don't necessarily put myself in either camp, if I'm honest.
Which of the 5 points do you agree or disagree with?
Which of the 5 points?
Do you agree or disagree with?
I'm not very big on irresistible grace.
Okay. But okay, well, let's just take the Reformed Protestant tradition then, if that's the
Yeah.
case. Like,
Okay.
say, the 1646 Westminster, 1689 London Baptist as representatives of such tradition, right? Well,
Yeah.
what would make us true, as from my perspective and from a Latter-day Saint perspective, and false from a Protestant perspective, would be the issue of ultimate authority. In Protestantism, well, there's other
Sorry,
authority.
Authority? Sorry,
Yeah, authority.
Ultimate authority. Yeah.
Yeah, ultimate authority.
My
Like,
hearing
even-
is not the best.
As you
I'm
as you
Irish.
listen to him talk, yeah, it'll actually get clear. So
And I
Yeah.
wasn't sure. Yeah, there was a little bit of a little.
he's
I'm originally
Irish.
from
Yeah.
Ireland, and English is a second language. So, with that as a preface, there's the issue of ultimate authority. Like, well, in Protestantism, there's other subordinate authorities, like the importance of the local church, local pastors, tradition in some sense. The only thing that actually has normative authority in Protestantism would be the 66-book canon of the Bible, a la traditional models of Sola Scriptura. We would not hold to that. For instance, we don't believe that public revelations cease with the last apostle. We actually would believe that's one of the theological errors that crept into Christianity, especially around the 2nd, 3rd century, as a over reaction to Montanism and other things. We would disagree about, well, we would all agree that the meritorious source of the salvation is the atoning sacrifice of Christ. We would disagree about the instrumentality. When Protestantism, you have faith alone, not in an antinomian sense, but like a faith that's alone, but still produces good works as fruit and so forth. I don't want to seem like I'm strawmanning Protestantism.
No, you're good.
Our theology, it's done through the instrumentality of water baptism. So baptism or regeneration would be an issue about that. The nature of justification, is it purely forensic and external, or is there an internal change in the person as well? So there would be like a host of other issues as well. That comes down to issues like priesthood, authority, sacramentology, and other issues as well. And there would be other issues as well, like vis-a-vis Christology and anthropology would be other issues as well.
So from what you know about Latter-day Saints, would you consider us Christians?
Again, like you said, there's some level and nuance to the term, right? So do we mean in the general sense? I think I'm going to operatively define Christian as someone who is revering Jesus Christ as the Son of God and is relying on Jesus Christ for salvation from sins. Using that as the most broad, basic umbrella term, I think there is room for LDS people, individuals, to belong in that umbrella.
Yeah, and that's not what I'm saying. So because that's basically saying if certain individuals within the church believe what you believe about those topics, then you would consider them Christians, regardless of whether they adhere to other beliefs you disagree with. But what I'm saying is the LDS Church's position on the doctrines, for example, that Robert identified, would those mean that anybody who believes those doctrines could be a Christian?
I believe that what we need to consider there are first tier issues, or primary issues versus tertiary issues, right? So when we say, like, we all agree that following and adhering to the doctrine of Jesus Christ is at its core, when you define Christian, you mean somebody who is of Christ, right? A follower of Jesus and what he says and what he teaches. And so in as much as we can agree on what he teaches, then if we agreed on what he teaches and we both agree that we accept those teachings, then that would define what a Christian means. I would think I would operatively define some of those teachings differently. Does that make sense?
Well, I understand what you're meaning. I would just say, like, when a Protestant framework, when it comes to, say, primary and tertiary issues, outside, like, say, maybe the explicit reference to, unless, of course, you believe I am, you will die in your sins, a la John 8 and a few other texts, there's no real basis for, like, a Protestant to claim, well, that's a primary topic, that's a salvation issue, and that's generally a tertiary issue. Because
I would disagree with that. I mean,
Okay.
I think we see precedents for that, and Paul is confronting these issues in the various churches, right? Where
But he
there's,
was he was living during a time of public revelation, correct?
I'm sorry, I'm
He
the
was
dog
he,
barking.
he was living during a time of public revelation, correct?
Paul is living during a time of public revelation.
Yes.
Defining public revelation as, yeah, like not limited to private. Yeah. I
Well,
mean, Paul is
as in
writing
scriptures
revelatory
being
scriptures,
revealed
but
there,
yeah.
and other sources of authority are as inspired as the written word at that time.
Yeah, Paul is writing revelatory scripture.
And he's also basing his teachings on other sources that were not written at the time that had the same authority as scripture.
Other sources not written at the time that were on the same basis of authority.
Yeah, that were equally God inspired or
Yeah, I think there's the oral tradition that occurs, but
so he was relying on two sources at the time. So like, how can a Protestant who doesn't have public revelation going on, and although there are certain other authorities like the church, they don't actually have binding authority, if you will, or they're not normative authority.
well,
How can one actually confidently be sure that, say, eschatology, like say the difference between pre or post millennialism or all millennialism, is indeed just like a minor issue? It's important, but it doesn't affect salvation and so
yeah.
forth.
So I'm
But
gonna work on,
justification is.
yeah, I'm gonna work on that specific issue. I think that's what we're kind of after, right? Is it essential for salvation for you to have like 100% of doctrinal belief correct? I don't think that you would say that. I mean, maybe I misinterpret, but I mean,
On a personal level, no, but like no church can actually, it's like the Judaizing heresy in Galatia. Like I'm sure the Galatian heresiarchs were like pretty orthodox when it came to say most other things. Like God, Paul does not condemn them about like say the nature of God, the nature of Christology. He
yeah,
basically condemns them about the instrumentality of how one became a member of the new covenant, a la Galatians 1, 6-9 in the entirety of the epistle.
Mhm.
But be that as it may, an organization cannot actually preach authoritatively something that is actually a gross error at the very least. I think we would all agree with that. I mean, like say, not, I'm a former Catholic. You've probably never been a Catholic, but like take Romanism, for instance, like elevating, like say the Marian dogmas, like the Immaculate Conception, bodily assumption, which are not apostolic in origin, as de fide, as in apostolic in origin, definitional faith. I think we would both agree that's a grievous error, right? Regardless
I
of, like,
would say, yeah, the Catholic, the Marian dogma, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
or if one denies a article of faith, like say, Latter-day Saints believe in baptism and regeneration. I'm guessing because you're a Baptist and you have certain other leanings, you would reject that. That if one of us is in error, that's actually a grievous error as well, because it's about the instrumentality of how one is justified, how is one regenerated as well. So an organization, at the very least, has to have this ability to actually be able to have confidence that what she's preaching is true. And you kind of lack that in Protestantism because there's nothing that has like an active living vice that you can actually go to, like a magisterium or some other teaching authority. And that's not a denial, like say scripture is God breathed or it's living, like Hebrews 4, if you think the word there is actually written in Revelation. But like when it comes to say something that's external scripture, that's a binding authority that can actually settle these issues. Because for instance, if it turns out like eschatology is actually a primary issue, almost as important as justification or Christology, that's a lot of people up the creek, if you will. So again, one has to actually be able to like know these things.
Yeah, no, and you said a lot of things there, so I want to make sure that we can, do as much with as many of those as we can. I think the first thing that we should be after is, okay, is it possible to be incorrect on any level of doctrine and not let that be a salvific issue? Now, I'm going to operatively define salvific
Are we
as
talking about individuals or a ecclesial body?
Yeah, I'm talking about the individual level, right? So at an individual level, we do not have reason to believe that your knowledge or acceptance of specific doctrinal issues ultimately and solely defines your salvation, defining salvation as post-death relationship and proximity to the Father. Okay. So using that, right, when we look through Paul's writings, he's writing to the churches consistently correcting false teaching or false doctrinal issues, right? And what we see in Paul's writing is we see at times he confronts some of those issues and some of those people teaching false things as being outside of the body, right? He would represent some of the Judaizers, like you mentioned in Galatians. He would represent those as exterior. Those are not people that believe the same things as us. Then he would also look at somebody who is, say, eating meat sacrificed to a temple, and to that he is calling that person a brother or a sister. He's saying, hey, if you're teaching that whether or not you eat meat or sacrifice to a pagan idol, if you're teaching that that is something that you cannot do, he is saying he disagrees with that. But at no point in that discourse is he delineating that that person is outside of the body of Christ. So what we see is a pattern for Paul correcting doctrine, but not all doctrine is something to which he ascribes you are in a doctrinal error that means that you are outside of the body.
Okay, well, just a couple of things. First of all, I would agree that there are like different degrees of culpability. I don't think anyone would deny that. For instance, I'm sure you would agree,
Yeah.
perhaps from your perspective, a Roman Catholic could be saved in spite of, not because of Roman Catholic theology. They could be in error thinking, say, Mary's body assumed her Queen of Heaven, while someone who's like a professional theologian, like say a Scott Hahn, he has greater culpability. So no one's really denying that there's like different gradients. The only issue is like, how can you, as a modern day Protestant who does not believe in public revelation and believe that the only thing that actually has binding authority is the 66 books of the Protestant canon, how can you actually make these decisions when it comes to, say, issues that come up after the apostolic era? For instance, do you believe that Nestorianism intrinsically is a theological error that could actually be seriously cults into one's Christ and one's salvation that they held to it?
Remind me exactly Nestorianism.
Nestorianism is what was condemned at the Council of Ephesus in the year 431. There's a debate as to whether Nestorius himself taught it, but it's the view that in Christ, although he has a human nature and a human will, and divine nature and divine will, he's actually functionally two separate persons. There's a real distinction in operations between the humanity and divinity of Christ. So it's basically two people in the one. And that's actually a very common functional error I've come across amongst many well-meaning Protestants.
Yeah, I mean, I would reject that doctrine.
But do you believe
do
that
I
someone
think it's a
held to it?
salvific issue?
It's dealing with Christology.
Do it.
Because it's dealing with Christology, I'm sure we can agree, like, Christology is the heart of the gospel, if you will.
I don't necessarily think that would be a salvific issue. And the reason I'm going to make that difference is because what I find in the writings of Paul is the only time that Paul seems to indicate that something is a salvific issue is whether or not your faith is in Jesus or your faith is in somebody outside of Jesus, or if your faith is in your works rather than in his atonement, right?
But
So
if someone's faith is in Christ, that's not something like an intellectual assent. That's a acquiescence, if you will, that you will follow him and believe in the reality of who Christ is. For instance, would you believe that Unitarians who do not believe Christ pre-existed, for instance, are, in your view, Christians in a salvific sense?
I think we have to be careful to not draw too harsh lines. And the reason that I say that is if we think about somebody, say, like the thief on the cross, right? Are you doing a doctrinal test on the thief on the cross? Are you saying, hey, if I ask him the right question at the right time, is he not going to be in paradise? Is he not going to be able to enter into, to go back to the Father, if you will, if he answers incorrectly?
Well, before you can go down the whole typical thief on the cross, one, that is an exception to the normative rule in the New Testament, even if you think he went to heaven. Secondly, he went to paradise.
No, I'm saying you're saying he's an exception. I'm just saying, that.
No, even if you think he went to heaven, but he said when he went to paradise.
Sure.
And on that
Which I would
day,
agree that
Christ did not go to heaven when he died. He went down to Hades.
I agree.
So we're not actually told about like the final destination, if you will. And of course, we would believe in posthumous salvation.
Well, not necessarily.
But
He said you'll be with me in paradise, not that you'll be with me in Yeah.
No, it says, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise.
Correct. Right. So
Yeah.
paradise is synonymous with the Abraham's bosom, right? Which is where Old Testament saints would reside, right? So there's still two realms that exist in Hades.
If you base it on Luke 16, but Luke 16 is a Christianization of a Egyptian parable. If you ever read, like, say, any conservative scholar on Luke, they'll discuss that. It's not a good text to go to. But even proceeding from that, if you read the Synoptic Gospels, in Matthew and Mark, you get the impression that both the malefactors were railing against Christ.
Yeah.
So it seems
I mean,
like, say, the
Point
malefactor.
of contention there is you rule out the possibility that the thief could have a change of heart on the
Oh,
cross.
I believe he did, and that's unique to
Yeah.
Luke. I'm not saying they're contradictory. You have to read the synoptics.
Okay, I was just making sure,
synoptically.
because that seemed to be where we were
No,
going.
no, I'm making a point. So it seems like he was repentant, but he also has a very good evidence of the eschatological message of Christ, like to come in the kingdom. He seems to recognize that Christ is divine because he actually says, Theodore, you're actually reviling against Christ, God.
Yeah.
So it does seem to indicate, and very number of early Christians believe that this malefactor actually had knowledge of the gospel prior to being on the cross.
Sure.
But like even if you think like that's a salvation scene, that's not the normative function of new covenant salvation. It's either through repentance, it's through baptism, and so forth. So like trying to appeal to the thief on the cross, it's kind of the rag doll of Protestant eisegesis. It just doesn't hold up. But just to go back to
I'm going to point out
just
to
to go
you.
back to the Unitarian thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
When Jesus says, like, unless you believe I am, you will die in your sins in the Gospel of John, you would agree, like, Christology is pretty important throughout the entirety of the Bible and what it means to be orthodox in one's theology.
I mean, I think, again, operatively defining words, operatively defining concepts that we're doing is ideal, right? So, hypothetical, like you're using Unitarians.
Yeah, I interact quite a bit with Christadelphians and they're Unitarians, so this is like a
Yeah.
first-hand experience for me.
So, taking that as an example, when we look at the scriptures, when we look at the text, if somebody denies the lordship of Jesus, that is somebody that would not be able to enter into his kingdom. So that would be a Christological issue. Now, I think you were talking about, we've covered so many things, but talking about how the hypostatic union works. I'm not
No, I wasn't
necessarily.
talking about the hypostatic union. I'm just saying if someone was an Nestorian, like they held in Nestorianism, like say the Assyrian Church, do you believe that they're outside, say, salvation? Because that would be, I'm unaware of any Protestant who officially, there's loads who functionally are Nestorian, but like would officially hold to like any Nestorian Christology.
Yeah, so do I believe it is essential for salvation to somebody have the correct view of the fully human interacting with the fully divine?
Or at least not to knowingly reject, say, the hypostatic union.
You know, I think what we have to then look at is, okay, again, are we applying doctrinal tests instead of tests of faith, right?
Well, this is Christology, so like if one is actually holding, like, say, to a gross Christological error, that would be indicative that their faith is in vain. I mean, to go back to the Unitarian example,
Yeah.
there's loads of, because I just interact with them on a number of occasions, there's like loads of, say, Christadelphians, but other Unitarian groups, not Unitarian Universalists, but people who actually are pretty conservative when it comes to, say, the Bible. You know, they would believe as an article or fate that it's actually blasphemy to claim Christ personally pre-existed. They even go beyond, say, the Arian.
If I'm honest, I think we're kind of deep on a rabbit trail that's not really after the questions that I'm after.
Well, you were asking about, like, say, Christianity, and then you brought up first tier primary doctrines and just trying to, like, ascertain how you consistently
Yeah, I guess
approach this.
maybe a way that this relates is when we look at, you know, the great apostasy. When we talk about that, when we look at, you know, what the church, what say Joseph Smith or following prophets have said about that over the years, I definitely am having trouble understanding necessarily what the church's position is on the great apostasy. Could you explain for me, for y'all, like what, when you understand great apostasy, what does that mean for you?
I'll let you go, Travis. I've been talking a lot.
No, just functionally speaking, I mean, in its simplest sense, it's the progressively over time, the loss of public revelation. I think Robert identified one of the dangers, and that's kind of the problem with primary versus secondary doctrines that he was kind of trying to address is how do you know which are which, and how do you know? So, for example, if I believe something that's false about Christ, or I believe something that's false about the nature of baptism or any other of those issues that are mentioned in the New Testament documents, and I have a mistaken understanding of them, somebody comes along and tries to correct that error and decides that this is secondary or primary, and you need to believe it, and so on. And there's this dispute and disagreement. How are those disagreements reconciled or remedied? Well, the way the New Testament texts seem to present that is they're resolved through the personal ministry of the apostles, either through oral teaching or letters. And so the loss of that connection to the divine through the oral teaching of a living oracle in the form of either an apostle or an Acts prophets that are coming and preaching in the name of God, that loss of authority and vesting authority in the biblical canon itself led to other issues, which are usually primarily what are mentioned by Latter-day Saints. So most Latter-day Saints you'll talk to will boil that down to the loss of priesthood authority following the death of the apostles. However, what the primary cause of the apostasy is the gradual rejection of public revelation in the form of an apostolic ministry that was occurring in the first century.
Okay.
Just on your view of the apostasy and so forth, would it be your view as a Baptist that there's no great apostasy and one can actually find true believers in what you believe to be the gospel in, say, the opening centuries of Christianity after the New Testament?
Yeah, that's kind of the problem that I'm trying to understand the LDS position, which is I read Joseph Smith saying,
what are you reading in Joseph Smith? So that's kind of why I asked you. So you've read the Book of Mormon, you've read parts of the Doctrine and Covenants, and you've read some Bruce R. McConkie books that aren't really considered authoritative.
I get that, but I mean, I think
what
he's
is it
trying to
that you're
represent doctrine from the church, and he's cited on your site several times.
right? But right, because he has an apostolic function. He's an apostle, but
Yeah,
in Mormon doctrine, for example, he's writing in his private capacity as an individual, not in his capacity as an apostle. In fact, he wrote that book before he was an apostle. So
reading from
it would be
Smith,
like me finding a book from some prominent leader of your own denomination and then saying, well, this is what you believe, and this guy was crazy or whatever. He said something that was in error, and
yeah,
we're going to
I
hold
think
you
the
to it.
difference there
And
would be,
I'm not agreeing that Bruce R. McConkie was in error on anything. I'm just saying you're taking a text he wrote and making it authoritative against the church.
yeah, I think, well, skipping over some things there. History 119. This is recounting.
What is that? History 119.
It's recounting his first vision, right?
Oh, you're talking about the I'm sorry. Are you talking about the first vision account in the Pearl of Great Price, or are you reading it out of the history of the church?
The particular reference that I'm drawing from here is, and I've seen this cited several times, but right now, the quote that I'm reading directly from is coming from a BYU author, quoting from, let's see here.
And who's the author?
I'm sure he's just some student. His name's Robert Millett. I'm not.
Robert.
Yeah,
Robert
he's a
Millett was a professor of theology.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So he's quoting from history, 1:9. That's what he put. I've seen it cited and quoted the same elsewhere. But he's reading Joseph. I mean, he just writes Joseph Smith, History 1:19.
Yeah, it's in the Pearl of Great Price.
Okay. How do you? Sorry.
I actually have it here, so I can actually read Joseph Smith History.
I mean, I've got it as well.
Yeah, I was answered I must join none of them, for they were all wrong, and the personage who addressed me, Christ, said that all their creeds were an abomination in his sight, and that those professors were all corrupt. that they draw near to me with their lips, but with their hearts far from me. They teach for doctrines and commandments of men, having the form of godliness, but they deny the power thereof.
Okay, so I guess my first question is, like, that's an authoritative text for you?
Sure.
That
Yeah,
one
okay.
is.
So working from that idea that that is authoritative text, if Joseph is saying that all their creeds were an abomination in his sight, strong language, and that those professors were all corrupt, that they draw near to me with their lips, their hearts are far from me. I mean, for you, what is he saying about the post-apostolic church or lack thereof prior to the restoration? Like, what is he saying about the beliefs and the creedal statements of people who profess to be Christians for, that 1400 to 1700 years or so?
Well, he's speaking to their creedal statements. He's essentially there's language in there from Matthew 15, for example, where it's bemoaning the Pharisees and the Sadducees who are relying on tradition and their interpretation of texts rather than accepting the preaching of the prophets that have been sent to them on other occasions. And so again, relegating religion to a consensus and a creedal statement is something that would be contrary to the principle of a revealed religion. And,
Yeah.
and in the act of the first vision, Joseph Smith is overcoming the apostasy through accepting and acknowledging that God is a living being who can interact with his children and reveal to them. So that very act is overcoming, like I said, that principal cause of an apostasy.
So
And
the
creeds would represent an error that comes out of apostasy. Namely, councils are determining without authority what doctrine is and how to decide which principles, doctrines, or practices are appropriate in the church.
So is the issue with the creeds the fact that the creeds were made, or the statements they made were incorrect?
Yes.
To both?
Yeah, I would say yes to both, Robert.
Yeah, especially the contents of the creeds. I mean, like
Yeah.
Millish, I think he's correct in one of his other articles, believes that one of the creeds in view was the 1646 Westminster Confession of Faith. And
Yeah.
frankly, from a Latter-day Saint perspective, what that teaches about, say, absolute divine simplicity, the nature of justification, the nature of God's decree, is frankly blasphemous. But there's other decrees as well, like, say, that of Trent during the Counter-Reformation, or one I think we would both agree with, like, say, the Second Council of Nicaea that dogmatized icon veneration.
Yeah. So is it just the creedal statements, or I mean,
Those who know and they
so
profess
what
belief in it as well.
I guess what I'm after is some of the language talking about the apostasy that occurs in those centuries is not limited to creedal statements. I mean, it seems to go further. I'm reading from Joseph
Yeah, as I
Field.
said, those who know and they profess belief in it as well.
I'm sorry?
Oh, as I said, those who know and they profess belief in it as well. That's what professor means in the 19th century context.
Yeah, right. So, like, if I accept the content of the creed, I'm an apostate because the creed is apostasy.
You would be embracing the form of false Christianity. So with
Right.
that, yeah.
So using that, working from that position, I think this is an agreement. This is from Joseph Fielding Smith. It's a state conference message, which I don't know, is that authoritative for you or not?
It
It
would not
depends
have
on what
binding
he's
authority. No.
yeah, it depends on what he's saying, where he's saying it. But at a state conference message what was his position in the church at the time?
This is speaking, I believe, in the office of prophet at the time. This is from 1891, but I may be incorrect at that.
Joseph Fielding.
Well, there's two Joseph Fielding Smiths.
Joseph, yeah.
I'm
This
guessing
is-
it's Joseph F. Smith, his father.
Yeah.
They were both Fielding Smiths. That's how we
In
differentiate them.
1890. Yeah.
But anyway,
1891, November 2nd. This
yeah,
is
it would
from
be his fault. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead. You can quote it.
Okay, so he says, "For I contend that the Latter-day Saints are the only good and true Christians," which is what you were saying earlier,
Mhm.
"that I know anything about in the world. There are a good many people who profess to be Christians, but they are not founded on the foundation that Jesus Christ himself has laid." So working from what you're saying, which is, I think what Smith here is saying, is that after, and I don't, hold on. Yeah, this is from the church's website on just the topic of the apostasy. It says, after the deaths of the Savior and his apostles, men corrupted principles of the gospel and made unauthorized changes in church organization and priesthood ordinances. The apostasy lasted until the restoration in 1820. So, if hypothetical, make sure I'm understanding. If every believer, if everyone who professes to be a Christian post creed, post apostolic death, is believing the things of the creeds, you're saying that they are in apostasy.
Correct.
Well, I think it's kind of an anachronistic claim, like just after the apostolic era,
Yeah.
or like say a few centuries afterwards when the creeds were formalized.
No,
Yeah.
I get you. I mean, formalization doesn't mean that the belief didn't exist beforehand.
Oh no, of course not. But
Yeah.
at the same time, like for instance, I think it's really silly to claim like no one believed in, say, the deity of Christ until 325. That's like a really silly Dan Brown type of thing.
Right.
But that's when it was like more or less like the final cherry on the top on the cake, if you will, or whatever the English expression is. But just on the issue of apostasy, so we're not speaking past one another, is it your view that the doctrines that you would believe to be, like, say, normative for a Christian, or at least essential for a Christian, were never lost during, like, say, the first 500 or 600 years, or even like the first 1500 years of Christianity?
Do I believe, so I'm going to operatively give you my answer. Do I believe that from Jesus's ministry through today, that there's consistently been somebody believing and teaching? And
Yeah, groups of people that you can point to in history.
That there has always been somebody pointing to salvation in the name of Jesus Christ, Son of God.
No, everyone believes in that, just like what you mean by that. That's the real issue. For instance, you're a Baptist. So let me just use this as an example. Do you believe, like, say, I'm guessing as someone who's a Protestant, and even if you don't believe in irresistible grace, you would believe, let's say, justification is forensic, it's not transformative. You would believe, for instance, that baptism, while it's important, is not regenerative. And, the typical Protestant understandings of, say, justification and salvation. Do you believe that understanding of what it means to, like, believe in the name of Christ? That justification is external. I'm guessing you would believe in some type of perseverance of the saints or eternal security. You would not believe in baptism, regeneration, and so forth. Would people who would understand the gospel and justification and salvation in light of that were known from, say, the year 100, like, say, when Ignatius was writing, to, like, say, 1500, even before the time of Luther?
Do I believe that from the time of 100 through the time of the Protestant Reformation, that there were at least people believing
you can point to in
in
history, and not just, like, say, hypotheticals?
Yeah, I mean,
Was somebody teaching, writing, proclaiming,
because, like,
examining,
because I asked that.
producing those doctrines?
I asked that because, like, I'm not saying you're like one of those Trail of Blood type Baptists, but there's, like, the view, like, of course there were people, we just can't really point to them.
Yeah, I think if you're, I think you're asking I think you're asking a question in a particular way that I reject the premise. And let me explain. Yeah. So your premise that I think you're leading to is say we're looking at the solas, or we're looking at these certain doctrinal positions. One, your premise is that people are saying that those are requisite for salvation. I'm not agreeing with that. Two, that people are consistently throughout history teaching and writing and professing those doctrines in the same language, or not necessarily like languages in English or whatever, but languages.
I'm not saying the same language. I'm just saying functionally.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. When I say language, I mean like meaning, like whether it's Latin or Greek or whatever. Like they're getting after the same thing if they're using different words, is what I mean. So I don't necessarily like, say for instance, Luther or Calvin is articulating something. I don't necessarily think that you can necessarily say that consistently from 100 AD through 1600 AD, you're going to find at all times there is a living person writing the same things that Luther eventually writes. So I recognize that that is not something that probably exists. But the reason I'm rejecting the premise of your argument is because I don't necessarily think that's a salvific issue in the
Okay,
sense
so,
of
so okay, that's fine. So like again, what would be a genuine salvific issue?
what would be, say that
In
again?
your in your view, what would be an example of a really important salvific issue?
I think that's a I'm not trying to be rude. I think that you're kind of approaching it from the wrong direction, right?
Well, I don't think so because you don't believe there was a great apostasy. Obviously, that's going to be a point of contention between us. So I don't want to seem like we're speaking past one another. So my view is like
Yeah.
you would believe that whatever you define to be of great importance of salvific issues, like a primary doctrine that one must knowingly accept, and if they knowingly reject it, they're in a precarious state. I'm
Yes.
guessing you would believe that articulations, or at least people functioning under that perspective, or those perspectives were known from, say, the year 100. I'm just picking that because that's more or less the close of the New
Yeah,
Testament.
I'm
To like
fine with
say
working with that, Jake.
15, 17 prior to say
Yeah,
Wittenberg.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so
So what?
so if I were to ask you, Alston, what are genuine salvific issues? And if you were, what would they be?
I believe the only salvific issue that is going to come to mind for me is going to be believing in Jesus of Nazareth as God's son and relying upon the atonement provided through his sacrifice on the cross alone for salvation.
Would you agree that would be something that has to be unpacked theologically? Because it kind of begs the question, like, say, what's the instrument of how one appropriates, say, Christ's saving righteousness? The nature of justification, is it internal or external to us? And
Yeah.
whether or not Christology is important, because we can all agree, we can all claim, and say Jehovah's Witnesses and Christadelphians and others would claim, yeah, we believe in all of that, but those words have to be unpacked theologically. And
I'm
if
gonna
we
make a qualification difference between somebody who an absence of knowledge versus a direct rejection. I think
that's why I tried to say knowingly.
yeah. So I'm gonna make a difference there. I think again, you have to, and maybe I'm out on an island by myself here. I don't think that I am. I think this holds true within my tradition, if you will. But I think that that we're not going to be judged based off of correct, incorrect doctrine to the level to which maybe you are ascribing. The reason that this relates to the great apostasy, right, is for the LDS definition of great apostasy means that there was either an absence or incorrect teaching of the gospel of Jesus post-apostolic at some point. And
Sure.
whether that's 300, whether it's 200, at some point the chain of priesthood is broken.
Yeah, and I believe it was a process. I don't think you can say like, some very naive people believe like say 2025 or Constantine or any of that.
Yeah. Like at some point he gets messed up.
Sure.
And so I think for you to make that statement, you have to say, because I don't think your position is one merely of authority. I think that's a key component of your position.
No, the position's more a loss of revelation.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
well, but not just a loss of active ongoing revelation. Your position is also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but your position is not just an absence of something, but also a presence of false, a presence of incorrect.
Well,
Is
I know,
that
but that's a consequence of the loss of the direct.
absolutely, absolutely.
Right, yeah.
And I get how that logically follows from your
Yeah, that's
belief.
like saying when I turn out the light, it's dark.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So there
Yep.
is dark because the light was turned out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think then what we have to say is that what doctrine is the church that existed or thought that they existed, turns out to be a false church. what doctrine or doctrinal stances does Jesus teach that they are getting wrong for millennia until Joseph Smith?
Well, the first one would be revelation from God.
What do you mean?
Receiving revel.
They're getting that wrong?
Yeah, for
Well,
instance, there's
rejecting it.
Yeah, for instance, there's not in the Bible that says public revelation would cease with the death of the last apostle. One has to go outside the Bible to actually hold to such a perspective.
I mean, I think if you look at Revelation, it indicates the close of Scripture.
It's talking about the book of Revelation
20
singularly. That's what tab biblia
20
means. It's a
Are
singular
you talking
book.
22,
That's an-
18, and 19?
Yeah, that's an interpretive stance, and I can
No,
recognize.
it's not. The Greek is singular.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
Are you saying that the author of Revelation closed the scriptural canon with Revelation 22, 18, and 19?
And I'm saying that that would be the most common Protestant stance. Yeah.
It isn't.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I'll tell you, and again, Austin, not to be rude, but that's
Nah,
typically
yeah.
the stance that I get from somebody who's never read the Bible before. And
I-
you with pastoral training and schooling
I
in
mean, similar
theology to
warnings
have
are in
that,
Deuteronomy 4 and 12.
yeah, that's
Yeah. I mean, okay. I mean,
we have
okay.
people who are professional antagonists against the church. It's literally their
James
livelihood.
White, for instance.
Yeah.
Yeah, who agree that interpretation of that text is completely eisegetical.
And I'm not holding closely to that. That is
Yeah.
by no means what I mean by like that is where I hang my hat. Like
To be fair, though, that
I'm
was the text he
comfortable.
appealed to.
I can totally be fine if we're just talking about the book of Revelation itself. I'm okay with that, and I'll still hold to my close of the canon outside of that.
Right, and
But
what
would
is
you
there
agree that
anything else that you could point to that would support the close of the canon within the text of the canon?
Yeah.
Such as?
I mean, do we church tradition it would be one thing.
But that would be external to the canon. That wouldn't be in the canon.
Yeah. I mean, is there anything in the canon that suggests that it's going to continue?
Yeah,
would
the
be
very
an
fact they were
argument.
living during times of
Yeah.
public revelation, and there's no hint at they were living during times of public revelation. So they were operating under a church that actually had binding authority. You see that's, for instance, in Acts 15, where even they appealed to Amos 9, but it was in a way one could never use exegesis to come to, i.e. The cessation of circumcision. They were living during some time of public revelation where there was other modes of God-breathed revelation, not just simply scripture, but oral tradition and oral teachings as well. And there's absolutely nothing. In fact, if you were to read, like, say, the earliest post-apostolic writings, like First Clement and Ignatius, they actually believe that their writings themselves were equally as inspired as scripture as well. So there's a belief, even
Doesn't mean it is.
Yeah, but it kind of shows
Right,
there's no
right, but
expectation
right,
that
but even that
the
decision, it doesn't mean that it is. Who decided that?
I would believe.
Where does that decision?
I mean, wouldn't we say that God is the one who decides if something's inspired or not?
Right,
Yeah, but
and
that
it would
begs the
take a
question, like, how
revelation.
one actually recognizes it.
Yeah,
For instance,
it would take a revelation for him to do that.
So I think maybe maybe I'm wrong, but your basis for saying that revelation continues, public revelation, binding revelation for all of Christendom, is the fact that public revelation happen. Like I'm not trying to straw man, but like public revelation
my
happens.
belief in public revelation comes from, like, say, the explicit teachings of Joseph Smith. I'm just saying if one holds to
Right. So
let me finish. If
Yeah.
one believes that the 66 books of the Protestant canon are the sole infallible rule of faith, and all other authorities, including tradition, are subordinate to it, they don't have any binding authority themselves, you can't actually claim one of the building blocks for Sola Scriptura, i.e. cessation of public revelation, is actually a biblical teaching. Because as I point out to James White, and he doesn't like this, you have to go outside the Bible and privilege that teaching or that tradition on the same authoritative level as written revelation, which of course is self-defeating. Because what's the teaching of Sola Scriptura? It alone, the 66 books of the Protestant canon, has this unique authority that no other source actually has.
Yeah, no, I see your argument, and I think it's an interesting one. But I think you maybe yourself have the same problem.
Why?
Well, that's too cocaine.
I think the problem that you're having is do you think there's a biblical reason, New Testament reason, to expect post-revelation, the book that is, post-revelation continued revelatory writings for the next generation of priests?
So even that question presupposes sola scriptura. You're presupposing that we
Well,
would
that's
have.
what you were
No,
presenting the argument
we're not. So we don't, but we reject the doctrine of sola scriptura. We believe the scriptures are authoritative
Yeah.
in the sense
So,
that they reflect God's will at a specific time.
so the only reason that you would suspect that Revelation continues is because it was happening.
No, so there's a very real example between the Hebrew scriptures and the Greek New Testament with respect to the apostasy that
Yeah.
existed in the apostasy that existed in the first century. That apostasy repeatedly throughout the Gospels is a product of the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the other Jews who are in power at the time using tradition and the text themselves, absent any public revelation, to interpret them. Jesus comes with his followers and he accesses public revelation through directly from God, and he's now adding clarifying messages and scriptures to previously existing texts. That is the opening of a canon, which foundationally everybody would historically agree. If you're a Christian, you believe that the Jews were in apostasy because their understanding of the Messiah was incorrect. Their understanding of their own scriptures was incorrect. Their addition of traditions that weren't consistent with the law of Moses was incorrect. Jesus repeatedly denounces those practices, and yet they, in the process of interpreting the Hebrew scriptures, he is adding to the canon. And that process didn't start until after his death with the apostles, because your earliest texts are the Pauline epistles written after Christ's death. And so we have these additions of the canon after his public ministry, which also add, even after Paul's ministry, the Gospels and other texts historically. And so there's this process of inscripturation that continues. But see, it's an argument that, well, it stopped, right?
This relates, I promise.
What would be the evidence that it should have stopped other than the decisions of human beings?
Yeah, so out of curiosity, because I don't know this and I think it relates to the topic, I understand that as you guys revere texts that, so in your reading of the Bible, do you include as authoritative the intertestamental texts of Maccabees, for instance?
We believe there's scriptural merit.
The LDS view about, say, the Apocrypha or the Deuterocanonicals is not like as simple as the Catholic view a la Trent or the Protestant view. If you were to read like section 91 of the Doctrine and Covenants, we actually do have an answer to this, namely that. And then some of the portions are inspired by God, but unless, of course, one actually has the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, when they read those texts, they won't be able to discern what's true and what's false, because we do believe that there were later interpolations. Now, if you mean intertestamental, like in a broader sense, like say 1 and 2 Enoch or the testament of the patriarchs and so forth, well, it's possible there could be like true traditions, like Jude quotes authoritatively Enoch, for instance, in verse 14. He actually says it's prophecy. That's what the Greek says. No. But if you're going to be pointing to, say, false scriptures as an example, like one could also appeal to like more or less contemporary false traditions and false teachings as well in the New Testament era as well.
Well, I guess what I'm after is for like, I'm trying to understand, like, was there a close of the Old Testament canon in LDS position?
There was a cessation of inscripturation.
Yeah,
certainly.
I mean, like,
But
even
we
in the
would-
time of Christ, there was no closed or fixed.
Yeah, we
Old
wouldn't say
Testament
that.
canon.
Yeah, that there was tradition. So Jesus laments, for example, and it's an example I use all the time with Matthew and Mark. The Synoptic Gospels have a record of Jesus lamenting the killing of prophets that are being sent to the Jews, going back to Zechariah from Abel, and then he says, "You killed the prophets. How oft would I have gathered you, but you would not." Talking about how he's sending servants to reclaim them, presumably through oral teaching. And had they been allowed to preach, and effectively they would have also inscripturated, which would have been the tradition, the prophetic tradition back dating to Moses. So the idea that there was no public revelation and no inscripturation, no public teaching, no authorized interpreter of the scriptures. And instead, they were basically doing it by consensus or vote or using scholarly methods to interpret their text. Yeah, they were in apostasy. But you're saying because something happened, it should have, I guess. If
No,
so, like if there was a closure of the Hebrew canon, there
I'm just trying
shouldn't
to
have.
understand.
Yeah, there shouldn't have been. No. And in fact, Latter-day Saints would reject the idea that there should have been because we believe in the Book of Mormon. When a people accept prophetic revelation, they continue to inscripturate.
So your understanding is maybe
So we actually
gaps.
have no. So Latter-day Saints in the ancient world, in Israel and in the surrounding areas in Jerusalem, you've got a lack of inscripturation predicated on a rejection of prophets. But taken from the Book of Mormon perspective, as prophets continue to minister, to receive revelation, to teach the people, and to be relied on for guiding the people from God, because that's the biblical pattern, they continue to inscripturate. So we have scriptures, granted they're from a different perspective because they're on a different continent, but it's still an Israelite perspective, and they are continuing to call prophets. And they're continuing to inscripturate. And yet that process ceases at some time prior to the birth of Christ for several hundred years.
Okay. So is there a writing from the apostolic fathers, post-apostolic fathers, like the fathers of the church, that you believe should be inscripturated?
No, but I wouldn't shed any tears at First Clement wherever it be inscripturated.
I'm so sorry. I can't quite.
Two things. One, probably not, although I would love if First Clement were to be, because that's awesome. But First Clement actually believed, and he was writing about the year 69, although some believe he was in the mid-90s. He believed that he was writing Theopneustos scripture. And Ignatius of Antioch, who died circa 107, believed what he was writing to the Trailians, for instance, were God-inspired as well. I just brought that up because it shows that even after the supposedly close of the New Testament canon, the final book in the New Testament, and seemingly you think it was Revelation based on your previous comments, there was still a belief in the believing community who received these texts that there was still ongoing God-breathed revelation going on.
Yeah, but I think
there would be more of historical witnesses.
Yeah. So I guess
but maybe I should ask you this, because you would hold to like exclusively for the New Testament, the 27th book. When was that actually authoritatively decided? Or would you believe that's just like a reception theory? God's people just passively over time just came to recognize these 27 books alone as the contents of the New Testament.
Yeah, I think at the moment of writing and the moment of, as composition, if you will, that is an inspired authoritative
I'm
text.
talking about, but I'm talking about the canon. For instance, like when Paul dictated to Tertius Romans, we would all agree that was like scripture and that should be part of the canon. But the recognition by the believing community to like say these 27 books, to the exclusion of all others, are part of the authoritative canon. For instance, like Paul references a letter he wrote before 1 Corinthians to the church at Corinth in 1 Corinthians 5, 9 to 11. But that's not part of the canon. In fact, it's been lost to the sands of history. So, so we do know like he wrote books that were never inscripturated,
Yes.
even if you don't believe it was inspired or not. So when in history did the 27 New Testament book canon came to be recognized as authoritative and what exhausts, if you will, the category of the New Testament? Do you believe it was in the moment of time, like say a local council like Hippo, or do you believe it was just passively recognized and at some point in time during this period of time it came to be recognized by God's people?
Yeah, I think.
And upon which authority?
Yeah, I think given the way that you're structuring the answer, trying to be fair to the way you're structuring the answer, I'm gonna go alongside more of the text is written and over time it is passed around and it's recognized. But I don't believe that it's a situation where it becomes necessarily canon. And I would reject that.
Well, when I say becomes canon, not saying like becomes God breed or anything like that. Just like
No, and I don't think
but
that's
like
what you're trying to say.
yeah,
But I
sure,
think
no,
there's a
fair enough.
definition or a difference between recognition, widespread recognition, and authority. I don't necessarily think that any of the councils are authoritative.
Sure, but do you believe, like, say, the recognition is itself authoritative? And for instance, if someone were to go up to you, like in your local Baptist church, and say to you, like, I really like the New Testament, but I don't believe, let's say, Jude and Second and Third Peter are actually Scripture. I've studied this
Sure.
myself, and I'm pretty confident in like my study of Scripture that we should not believe in Jude and Second and Third John. So I don't believe it's God-breathed Scripture. Do you believe that would be like a issue when it comes to say local church government and people being accepted into
Honestly,
your
I,
church?
I don't think it matters.
So the contents of the canon don't matter.
No, I think the way that you phrase the question doesn't matter. Like you put in a position of local church government, and
Okay.
yeah,
Well, I'm
like
talking
I'm
about
not
like,
after local church government, like
okay. Do you
in
believe?
that sense.
Okay.
I think
Okay. Just like
what I'm after right now is like, you're really a strong position for the LDS church is, this universal authoritativeness, right? And so I think that you like I'm going to reject the authority of councils, and I'm comfortable with that.
okay. So do you believe that's based on say the right to private interpretation for the Christian, like Luther and other historical Protestants believed in?
I think we're asking the wrong question, right?
Well,
Like,
well, you said you would reject, say, the authority. I'm just saying, like, do you believe that to be based on the belief that the individual Christian actually has the right to conscience and to reject any authority that they themselves believe to be against Scripture?
yeah, and again, I think we're not asking the same questions here. And what I mean by that
I
is,
know this does come down to like the issue of like binding authority and final authority because
yeah,
as a Baptist
I
and as
get it.
Latter-day Saints, this is
Believe me,
like a
I get where
central
you're
issue.
coming from. I'm just trying to answer what I'm trying to answer. Um, I think what I'm saying is that if God is the ultimate authority, authority only matters so much as in it is agreement with Him, right? So any authority that proclaims to be an authority that is in disagreement with God is a false authority.
Sure, but that requires one meaningful interpretation. I think we would all agree with that. And also how to delegate and adjudicate between differing claims of interpretation. That's why when you said like a Christian, and I'm sorry if I'm going to butcher this, like someone who places their trust in Christ, believes in his name and so forth, those things have to be unpacked because you could have an Arian, you could have a Unitarian, and you could have, in this case, a Latter-day Saint and a Baptist
Yeah.
agree when it comes to words, but when it comes to the interpretation, that's the issue. And if
Well,
one's interpretation, and I'll let you go ahead, Travis, but like at the end of the day, like when it comes to some of these topics, like there are like interpretations that have to be binding or not. And as a Protestant, you lack that the binding authority or the normative authority, if you will, of
Yeah,
any other
but
structure outside
I'm
the
oh,
Bible.
sorry, Travis, you wanted to say something.
yeah. So just kind of as a kind of going back to, I guess what your point is. I'm trying to gather what you're getting at, but um,
And not
the
to be difficult, but I have to walk back home in pitch dark. So like if we could just like maybe
yeah,
wrap
yeah,
up in like say 10 or
about
15
20
minutes, if
minutes.
that's
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure. So in looking at so for example, oftentimes when I talk to evangelicals of different stripes, they're most of the time they're very nice, but sometimes they're pretty heated, and they come in with this accusation that Latter-day Saints aren't Christian, and the primary concern amongst that is one, we don't believe what the Bible says about certain things. That's usually relatively superficial, and we can discuss that. But one of the primary concerns they have is that we believe in a different Jesus. Our understanding of who and what Jesus is wrong. And then
Yeah.
they list a series of what usually end up being misrepresentations of our theology. They spit those back at us and they say, you believe in this Jesus. He's a created being, and all these different things that they misrepresent our theology. As a result, it doesn't matter that I believe in Jesus of Nazareth, that he died and he rose again the third day. My Jesus is not the saving Jesus. I believe in a different Jesus, therefore I am going to hell for confessing the wrong Jesus. So even though I would I would say, no, my Jesus is the Jesus of Nazareth who was crucified by Rome, who preached in the Gospels, who rose again the third day. I've read the Gospels. I accept that Jesus. They're like, yeah, but you have these other understandings of who and what he is that are inconsistent with our beliefs, and therefore you are in apostasy, you're a heretic, and you're going to hell when you die.
Yeah, so and this is really, I think, a key point in my confusion with LDS, right? So your discussion right there seems more geared towards convincing me that no, we're really not all that different.
No, it's not.
And
We're very
okay,
different.
okay, well then that's where I'm super confused
Yeah,
because
we're
to me
very
that's how
different.
that
No,
comes
we're very
across.
no, we're very different. What I'm saying is your my understanding of what your point is basically
Yeah,
for centuries people just kind of believed in Jesus, and that's Protestantism, and
yeah,
and they're saved because they believed in Jesus and put their trust in him, whatever that means.
yeah,
Robert's point was is that has to mean something. There has to be some unpacking of those concepts, and that is what's often been presented to me by every evangelical I've ever talked to. So my issue there is I don't disagree that we have completely different understandings of the nature of God and things like that. That's
sure.
perfectly fine. But arguably, from our position, we are correct. Our theology is sound and correct.
I get you.
And yours is not correct. Now, we grant you grace based on, largely the understanding that what you believe is predicated on certain false assumptions and presuppositions that have led you to what you believe. But irrespective of all that, I am told I am not a Christian. I am going to hell when I die. And we have to unpack our theologies.
Yeah. And we've not gotten a lot of time to be able to dive into like yeah, I don't profess to know everything that you two as individuals think. I think really I'm just trying to understand like, and here's where my real confusion
Well,
lies.
it's very simple. Robert and I accept the doctrines of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's what we
Yeah.
accept.
So my confusion lies in my interactions with LDS missionaries have frequently been this confusing battle between, on the one hand, them trying to explain that we're different, and then by the end of the conversation, I'm being tried to convince that really we believe in Jesus just like you believe in Jesus, and we've given you all we can give you. Literally, I mean, the things that I've been told have been akin to, hey man, you are on the right track. You've received enough clarity. Well, like I'm not super concerned about you. There are people that don't know Jesus. And to me, I have a hard time reconciling what the LDS missionary says at the end of that conversation with the teachings of the great apostasy that says all these creeds are an abomination, these creedal statements that, for centuries people believed. I mean, I understand, I recognize, and as you did as well, that there are significant differences between us theologically, but I have a hard time reconciling that with the missionary who says, but you are similar enough, I don't need to spend more time with you.
Right. And I'll give you a really important point. And the missionaries are often not clear on this point. Their job is to teach a series of outlined lessons and then encourage you to read the Book of Mormon.
Yeah,
Conversion to the church requires independent, careful, deep, diligent research. Like Robert, for example, didn't join the church because some missionary answered his questions.
sure.
Because Robert learned very quickly, as I have myself, as missionaries, especially having served a mission myself, 18 to 20-year-old kids don't understand a lot of these issues. They lack the knowledge. So appealing to them for answers is probably not a good idea. It's also the reason why they're encouraged to bring members to discussions or to help also. But
Yeah.
also, too, the church has vast resources available online, and we have our scriptures. The Doctrine and Covenants, for example, clarifies a significant number of these doctrines.
Yeah.
But yes, there are differences. If there wasn't differences, if you and I were just the same,
Yeah.
we wouldn't be
There's no
doing
point of that. I
missionary
mean,
work.
great apostasy
there's no
really
point in
isn't
doing
that great if we believe the same thing.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, we don't believe the same thing. And we're not saying that we do.
So let me ask you this, based on the conversation that we've had so far and the differences that we have theologically, is your position like, hey, your differences with me are significant enough that I need to continue to answer any questions that you have and talk with you?
Yes.
Okay, because this is genuinely the first time I have talked to lots of LDS people over the years. Genuinely the first time. Okay, second time I've gotten a missionary to connect me with somebody else other than them. And this is the first time that a person at this level has said, I'll talk to you more than other than this one conversation.
No, yeah. The difficulty with that is that's just people. That's not the church.
No,
That's just people across the board.
and I get you.
Yeah.
And so everything that I've received up to this point has been vastly different than that. So I'd welcome the ability to have continued conversations. I guess I still, guys, and maybe I'm missing what you're saying. Like, in order for you to say that the great apostasy exists.
We've already admitted that it did.
No, right. Yeah. So you have
We've
to
both,
say, yeah.
well,
So
I think
like,
we've all agreed that there was a great apostasy, even if you don't acknowledge that that's what happened.
yeah. So in order for you to say that, like, there is the LDS understanding um, that basically, like, the gospel, the principles of the gospel were lost. I mean, that's
Hopefully
what we read
that are
earlier.
changed. That are
Yeah,
changed.
which is why I said like the theological statement you made has to be unpacked. I mean, all traditions would agree with that at the very least.
Yeah. So the gospel in its simplest form, as I understand LDS presentation, this is from 3rd Nephi 27:13 through 22, probably a summary statement. But Jesus sent by the Father, whoever repents, believes, and is baptized in his name endures to
Yeah,
the end.
we're
washed in
familiar
his
with the
blood.
passage. Yeah.
Yeah. So what of that was lost in the great apostasy?
Baptism.
That's
The correct
it?
mode of math, the correct mode and authority of baptism, the true nature of God, the true nature of the atonement, how it's applied. I mean, the thing is that all of that has to be unpacked.
Yeah.
To think this statement, if read, is salvific. If you believe this statement, the issue with it is it's like, okay, well, what is the nature of Christ and God?
Yeah.
And then that's basically like if one paragraph read is sufficient for salvation. I mean,
No, and that's so
incredibly superficial, I guess.
So it's Jesus. You're saying I have an incorrect understanding of Jesus.
The nature of God, yes, because you believe in the Trinity, I imagine.
Okay, so what's the differentiation? Like,
Well,
go ahead. Like the
well,
2-second version, as much as you can.
we reject the formulation of the Trinity.
Yeah. So is what's the significant difference just related to the differentiation between the Son and the Father?
Well, your
Well,
understanding of Go ahead,
we
Joe.
would not believe in divine simplicity. We would believe that there's no species differentiation between us, God, and man. So the hypostatic union kind of makes Jesus into a puppet at times, especially in light of Mark 12. And we would believe that they're numerically distinct from one another. So
That they're distinct from one another?
They're numerically
distinct from one
distinct.
another.
Yeah. They are two
Yeah.
beings rather than just two persons within one being.
So what's the
although
difference for
they
you?
have, like, say, the indwelling unity or perichoresis, they have numerically distinct wills, although they're unified with one another, and they have distinct natures in a real sense than the later 4th century understanding of what hypostasis meant.
And
So
on a broader scope, the difference is as Robert said, the difference is functionally a distinction between the natures of humans and God in what you believe and with respect to what Latter-day Saints believe. We don't believe that there's a species distinction. And as a result of that, our objectives and our purposes in using the effects of the atonement are significantly different, much improved in Latter-day Saint theology.
The Godhead, right? You believe in three, you would say three beings, right? You
Right.
would say Father, Son, Holy Ghost.
Yeah.
So they are not, what is the difference?
They are not an incomprehensible Trinity.
We would also reject, like, the Nicene understanding of consubstantiality. And although it's not unique to Latter-day Saints, we would only believe that the person of the Father is autotheos.
What does
we believe that-
autotheos mean?
Basically, God in and of himself. Eastern Orthodox also believe this. Basically, Christ derives his divinity, not in an Arian sense or temporal sense, but it's based on his indwelling unity or perichoresis with the Father. There are some traditions in the West that would believe all three are autotheos. So,
as I'm understanding what you're trying to say there,
the analogy would be like, say, a river and like the head of a river.
Yeah.
The Father is the font of the river being Christ, but not in a temporal sense like Arians.
yeah. So, is there a time where Jesus is not God?
I would say no. We're not Arians.
So Jesus proceeds from the Father?
His divinity proceeds from the Father. He's divine based on his perichoresis or his indwelling unity with the Father. That's the theology, for instance, of Hebrews. And
But it's
Philippians.
eternally existent, eternity past.
Yes, we believe, but we would believe everyone has eternally existed. That's part of our theology of pre-existence.
Yes, but his identity as divinity is an eternal existence.
With
Yes.
the qualification I provided, yes.
Yeah. I don't find that is necessarily what I see in the teachings, I mean the writings. And maybe
Then you're likely
I'm asking you to clarify.
Yeah, you're likely misunderstanding them.
So take for instance, McConkie says Christ attained godhood yet while in pre-existence. What does that mean? Like, do you disagree with McConkie?
No, because God, divinity in our theology is like it's a ladder, if you will. We believe he's always been divine, just like to give an analogy, like in Philippians 2:6-11, the Carmen Christi, or to him, Christ was actually super exalted by the Father after his ascension. But that does not actually mean he was less God beforehand. We actually do believe that there's, I don't know, you disagree, but you can shake your head all you want. We do believe that like divinity is not like, say, static.
Well, okay, so like I'm really
So yeah, so one of the
trying
biggest
to-
problems, one of the biggest problems that we have with a lot of people is they will go and they will take statements written by our leaders and they fail to do the actual exegetical work to understand those statements within the broader context of LDS thought. As though
that's what
one
I'm trying to
statement,
understand.
right, as though, but I know, but that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like saying, taking one passage out of one church father and then saying that's
Yeah.
early Christian theology. It's
No,
not.
so like I'm trying to basically what I'm wanting to discern is
So
like-
basically, in order to know what McConkie was talking about, you would have to know McConkie. You couldn't read one, so I've read a lot of McConkie.
yeah. So
Right. And so, your understanding of what he believed would be basically him
like he's using
rejecting-
different terms in different ways.
Well, his understanding of the audience. So it's possible in some cases apostles will actually speak above the reader or the listener.
Sure.
They're using terms in ways even the reader or the listener is not familiar with, believing that they have a fundamental or foundational enough knowledge of the prerequisite theology to understand the concept.
We do this all
They
the time,
sometimes don't.
every day,
Right.
insider, outsider language.
Right.
And that's what I'm asking. Like when Milton R. Hunter, I don't even know who that is. Okay.
It was a general
yeah,
authority in the mid-20th century.
Okay. So when he says Jesus became a God and reached his great state of understanding, do you like when he says a God, what is your understanding of
that he's numerically distinct from the Father?
But
I mean, the best analogy
became a God. Like what does that mean? I don't understand what it means. Like what Milton, as much as you know.
See, so one of the things is that within LDS thought, the term God doesn't just refer to the Father.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm familiar with the LDS position on that.
Yeah, and that should clarify significantly.
But like the idea that became so
that Jesus became super exalted after his exaltation.
Like, so what you're saying is like when he's saying became a god, you're saying that he reached a point where people were worshiping him,
No.
like that
Did
understanding of God.
did Christ add something to him as a consequence of his mortal existence, the accomplishment of his atonement and his resurrection? Was something added to him?
Um, like you're like I'm
Was it
trying
was
to.
he changed? Was he changed in some sense? He'd accomplished the
Say it
will
again.
of the Father in all things. By
Yeah.
doing what the Father commanded, he had accomplished the will of the Father. And he
Okay.
was granted the glory to sit down at the right hand of his Father. As Robert said, he was super exalted.
And given
Yeah.
the name above every other name.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. So is that how you're defining Godhead or Godhood?
That's how Latter-day Saints understand it. We know from our scriptures, very clear in our scriptures, especially the Book of Mormon, that Jesus was divinity before his mortal
Sure.
existence. He came into
So
mortality as a result of his condescension. He accomplished his role as the atoning sacrifice for sins. He was exalted to God following his resurrection. And so they'll use terms of he became God. And what they mean is he became precisely like his Father in a literal sense.
Again, in our theology, God is not like, say, a static idea. Yeah. Just as like, say, in most Trinitarian theologies I've read, there was to the person of Christ, like say something added to him, some type of exaltation given to him after his ascension, a la Philippians 2 and Hebrews. That's the analogy when it comes to say pre-mortality as well.
So when in LDS theology somebody becomes God in the celestial walking, they're carrying out Jesus in his will, just as Jesus carried out the Father's will.
You cut out. We missed what you said.
Oh, I'm sorry. So like in LDS understanding, when in the celestial kingdom somebody becomes God or a God, you mean it
They
in the sense
become
of,
the better term is for people to understand what we mean
yeah.
is to say that we become like God. Becoming a God, becoming God is confusing to people who are unfamiliar with our theology. The better way to say it is we become like God.
In what sense?
We become like God
Like in what sense?
in every sense.
Well, you can't be like God in every sense, though.
Basically,
Why not?
our view would be like, say, basically what's called Christification, if you ever heard that term. Basically, all like Christ is, we will become through his grace. Like one very good text is like Revelation 3, where like Christ is addressing the churches.
Yeah.
And
So, sorry, go ahead.
no, dude, seriously, let me finish. Like in verse 9, he promises those who obey, they'll be given proskynesis or worship. And in verse 21, he says to those who will overcome, i.e., faithful Christians who persevere, they will sit on his on the very chair of the Father as he does. And if you're familiar with, say, the intertestamental period, and you've referenced intertestamental literature, to sit on the throne of God is basically to be recognized and become divinized. And that's basically what Christ is saying. Like, just as he's, through his own ability, overcame, through his grace, we'll be Christified. And that's basically the message of John's entirety of his writings. Like in 1 John 3, we'll be just as sanctified and purified as Christ is when he comes. So we would believe in Christification in a real substantial sense, not simply like a end of sanctification type of understanding that some Protestants believe in.
Yeah. So point of clarification, when you're saying, like, I mean, things, is there anything reserved for the Godhead that cannot be given to someone outside of the Godhead? Like things that only belong to the Godhead?
Us worshiping them.
Okay. So in that sense, you
The
cannot
Father
become,
remains, yeah. The Father remains the Father. Christ remains Christ.
yep. So you
I
are never going to receive worship.
no, as Robert said, we can. We're granted to sit on their thrones, but our worship of them. So will Christ worship his Father?
Yes.
Okay, like that.
But who's worshiping you?
I have no idea.
Like, where would that person come from?
I don't know.
So your understanding is that that like there would eventually, and
Maybe
the celestial,
Baptists.
we'll see. Your understanding is that at some point in the celestial kingdom, there will be another people that you would be like Jesus to them.
No.
Then I'm having trouble understanding.
Yeah,
Like,
because I don't know the answer to that question. That's beyond the scope of our revealed thought. Latter-day Saints speculate on that issue, but we don't really have a.
but your expectation is that at some point you would be worshipped in the celestial kingdom.
No, my expectation is that I will be like the Father and I will dwell with him eternally, in whatever sense that means. I will be like him physically and like him with the same capacity as he has, yes. But as far as will I be a god of other planets or things, no. Our faith has tried to clarify on multiple occasions that that's not a part of our theology. It's not a systemized part of our theology, because the idea is that we become gods of our own world. In my understanding, that makes no sense, because what worlds Christ has formed or created, he delivers to the Father.
Yeah, and that's why I'm super confused.
And since he is the type of us, then that's what we would do. We would continue to direct worship and glory to our Father. Jesus, as Jesus says to Mary, my God and your God, my Father and your Father.
So there is never a point in the celestial kingdom where you would accept worship.
I don't know the answer to that question.
See, and that's a huge problem for me. And I don't mean
Why?
this in a rude way, because in the one hand, you're saying worship is reserved for the Godhead. But on the
So
other hand,
that's like me asking you what happens in heaven when you die.
I would say I can say things that won't happen.
What happens in heaven when you die? What do
That's
you
not
do?
what I'm asking. I'm
No, that's
asking,
what I know. You're asking me what happens in heaven after I die.
I think there's a difference.
I've told you what's been revealed to us.
Yeah,
But you're
I think
saying I have other questions, but those
Yeah.
questions haven't been clarified.
no,
Also-
but I think there's a
also
difference
just-
between me asking what will happen or is this an impossibility, right?
Well,
Like that's a huge difference because like for instance, if I were to say, is it possible that God ceases to exist? You would agree that's an impossibility, correct?
Correct. Yes, correct.
Okay, so I think it's fair ground to
Could I
ask.
receive worship from some other classification of people?
Yes.
To the degree that there are degrees in the
Yeah.
eternal worlds, possibly, yes.
Yeah, and
But
I think that's an
our
anti-biblical
theology,
statement.
that's a
Like
what?
I think that's an anti-biblical statement. I think that's a rejection of Jesus's teachings, and that's why I would have a major issue with that.
Right,
what would
because
you
you
do,
presuppose.
yeah, what would you do
Scriptura.
with, like, say, passages in the Old Testament, which are like in, say, temple contexts, like First Chronicles 29, where the Davidic king actually receives the same type of worship or veneration as Yahweh does?
Yeah, are you speaking in a prophetic sense?
No, First Chronicles 29:20. It's about the temple liturgy, and we're talking about like how the
Do you mind
Davidic
if I
king.
pull it up?
Go ahead. I mean,
What's
not
your?
to be difficult,
You said
but I have to
First
walk
Chronicles
back home.
what?
First Chronicles 29, verse 20.
Hold on.
And not to be rude, but like maybe if we could just end on this point because I have to walk back home in the pitch dark.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No, it's fine.
And he's so attractive, we don't want him to get sexually assaulted.
Yeah,
Jeez, dude.
strong. So, 28. You said First Chronicles 28:20.
No, 29, verse 20.
Okay. I'm reading from the ESV. I'll switch to the KJV if you
No,
want.
you're
you can
fine.
read-
ESV is fine.
ESV is
Yeah.
fine.
Okay. Then David said to all the assembly, bless the Lord your God. And all the assembly blessed the Lord, the God of their fathers, and bowed their heads and paid homage to the Lord and to the king.
Yeah, that term worship is actually kavah in Hebrew. That's the normative term for worship. So both, as he knows, like say Yahweh or God, however you want to render it, and the Davidic king are actually given the same type of veneration or worship in that passage.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with that.
Why?
I don't think that it's a normative thing. So what we want to do, principles of exegesis, right, is interpret particular in light of the whole, correct?
Yeah, the Analogia Fide by Protestants like Carson Begging, just like in this particular text and the liturgy, the Davidic king, he actually does receive worship, just as just as Yahweh does.
And
The
by
only
part
distinction is the day after, where sacrifice is given to God.
and the
Yeah,
part and
so
sense of the whole in what whole?
the
What's
part
the
and
whole?
sense of the whole.
Yeah, what do you mean by the whole?
Well, it's convenient for you because you would accept a D and C that accepts a doctrine, that it anticipates you getting worshipped. But I'm saying
And from
at
your
that
Protestant perspective, it's informed by your a priori assumption that
yeah,
events
no,
can
and
be
I get it,
venerated.
but I'm saying at this point in revelatory history,
Okay, the people there at the liturgy, were
yeah.
they in error in doing this?
Well, I'm going to say a couple of things. We're going to point out some things. One, this text is describing something that happened. That doesn't mean that it's prescriptive, it's just descriptive.
But God accepts the worship as seen the day after, where he accepts the sacrifices.
Okay. Does it affirm and say that, one, I think points like in the logical argument formulation, right? You have to say that this text is saying that, one, it is absolute that the assembly is worshiping the king the same way that they're worshiping the Father. That's
There's
point
no
one.
distinction in the Hebrew or the Greek.
Okay, that's your point one. Your point two then has to be that this is something that is celebrated and affirmed rather than something that is, there's an absence of evidence in that. And then three, you have to show that that is something that is a proper interpretation based off of the other texts that we have.
What are the texts?
No, I just have to show it's a proper interpretation based on the historical grammatical context in which it appears.
Yeah, I would say that that context includes the revelatory history. I
But
think you would as well.
One would privilege the immediate context first and foremost.
Yeah,
And I'm unaware of any condemnation of this passage. And God is pretty peed off when it
I
comes to
think,
idolatry, especially when it comes to the temple context.
yeah, I mean, I am the first and the last. Besides me, there is no God.
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. What's the
Yeah, we
historical
don't
context?
have time to go. Yeah, we don't have time to go into the
Yeah, Yahweh
yeah.
is contrasting himself. By the way, knows how he speaks as a single person here.
Yeah, those are
He's contrasting himself with Baal and Asherah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with him speaking in the singular there. I know you're not, but I'm comfortable with it.
No, I'm comfortable
why
with
aren't
single
we?
as well.
Oh, okay. Well, you seem to say that that was a problem.
How many
No,
divine
no.
persons are speaking in that text?
I'm sorry.
How many divine persons are speaking in that particular text?
I would say singular.
Okay, so
I
do
mean,
you see the problem with absolutizing that passage even from a Trinitarian perspective?
I do not.
Unitarianism.
Yeah, I disagree.
Well, that's your ipse dixit.
That's what?
Your ipse dixit. Your say so.
Sure, but you can't say that that's like, I mean, how many scores upon scores of Trinitarians are perfectly comfortable with that passage?
Loads, and they're inconsistent.
I mean, you say they're inconsistent, doesn't mean that they are.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So
Just as there's scores of Muslims who think Muhammad's prophesied in Saul and Solomon.
say that again. Sorry.
Oh, no, never mind.
Yeah. So I guess is your response to that passage like that's only the Father speaking and Jesus is fine with it?
There's an immediate historical context to those passages in Isaiah 40 to 47. I mean, it's one, the language of incomparability, which is also use of swords, which, of course, there's ontologically, there's more than one sword, of cities, such as Babylon, Isaiah 45, verse 7, thereabouts, and all that. And also there's a historical context. For instance, in Isaiah 43:10, when it says there's no savior besides me, Yahweh is contrasting himself with the belief that there's a co-metrix figure called Asherah. That's a historical context. Because Isaiah is actually not strictly monotheistic. You see this, for instance, in Isaiah 6 and the number of, you can laugh as much as you want.
Wait, I want to make sure I'm understanding. Your position is that Isaiah is polytheistic?
No,
the Hebrew Bible is
monotheism.
not. Yeah, the Hebrew
For instance,
Bible
you see
is
this
not
in Deuteronomy
monotheistic.
32 in its original context before it was corrupted by the Masoretes.
Wait, hold on. I want to 100% make sure I'm understanding this. This
Go
is
ahead.
super critical. Your position is that Israelites have a polytheistic understanding of the universe.
Ancient monotheistic, not polytheistic.
I'm so sorry. I'm not trying
Ancient monotheistic. In what that means is within their larger context, Israel has a God. Israel's God. They have
Yeah.
been called to a covenant relationship with their God,
Yes.
but they understand that there are gods in other nations.
Who have
Sometimes they
ontological existence.
pursue a relationship with the gods of other nations. They don't worship all of them at once in the polytheistic sense. They worship their God, and sometimes they will worship the God of another nation and betray their covenant relationship with the Israel's God.
And
So
Yes.
that's the understanding and context of the Hebrew scriptures.
And they believe that
Yeah,
they
so-
have real or ontological existence. I'm sure you've, if you study, let's say, textual criticism of the Hebrew Bible, you kind of see this, like where later generations would actually soften or get rid of certain texts, like Deuteronomy 32 in the Dead Sea Scrolls, or
Right.
just simply the say Psalm 29 or 82, where there's true gods in the midst of the one true God, and they're not human judges; they're actually Elohim.
Yeah. So is that something that you would say there's somebody that is divine in eternality and power and the qualifications of the Father that exists?
So what I believe today wouldn't have any bearing on what their understanding is and the context in which they're writing their own texts. And that's what you want to understand. You want to understand what they understand, what's going on in their heads. Right? That I would reject that the gods of these other nations exist or don't exist is immaterial to the fact that's their worldview. That's what the texts will reflect.
Yeah, but
It's like trying to read the Trinity into the Hebrew Bible, for example. Like even if you're a Christian who believes in the Trinity, there's no Trinity in the Hebrew Bible.
and I could disagree with that, but
Yeah, and I don't know.
I'm comfortable with it, but
It's just I've had these kinds of discussions with lots of incredibly informed evangelicals, and I don't know
Sure.
any of them that would make that claim. So
that's okay. I mean,
the revelation. In fact,
saying
most
that
claim that the revelation of the Trinity came in the intertestamental period prior to Matthew, rather than it being explicated anywhere in the Hebrew text. So
yeah, no, I would agree in the sense.
That's an odd position for you to hold. So
I'm going to agree that, that is a doctrinal position that is clarified, but is there any intimations of it that exists?
no,
I would
there's
disagree.
there's no suggestions of it anywhere. Yeah,
I think
the triune nature.
absolutely. Well, here's how I would say absolutely that exists, because what does Jesus point to claim his divinity?
I don't know.
Are you going to claim Psalm 110 verse 1?
Say that again.
Or are you referencing, like, say, Mark 12, where he claims Psalm 110 verse 1?
No, I'm saying when Jesus is claiming his divinity, right? When he is
the Son of Man.
Yeah, I mean, consistently, Jesus is pointing to the Old Testament and in anticipation of a messianic figure who is not purely human.
And that results in Nicene Constantinopian Christianity. How? I mean, I'm aware, like, Daniel 7 how it was received, but that still does not make a Trinity. It's like people appealing to, say, triadic phrases in the New Testament and thinking that means the Trinity.
Yeah,
It's
no,
also Jesus.
I think you're equating two things that should not be equated. You're equating intimations hinting at implications with clear explicit revelation.
Okay.
So I can comfortably say and correctly say, as I'm thinking you would be comfortable with, that the Old Testament at least hints to a messianic figure that is simultaneously human and simultaneously God. Right?
Predicated on the interpretations of the New Testament authors, yes.
But you agree with those interpretations, right?
I agree with them, but that doesn't mean that they're correct.
So then drawing that argument back, then you could say, okay, well, yeah, the Old Testament is revealing
but you understand that that's just once you've presupposed and concluded something
I'm not
based on your
presupposing.
position, then you can read that back into the text.
No, I think there's a difference there. The difference is you're saying it's and I'm excuse me if I'm taking words out of your mouth. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, there's no Trinity explicated anywhere in the New Testament either. So
I would disagree
again,
with that.
yeah, and again, it is, you can disagree, but it's factually just not there.
Yeah, you're not going to find like say
I mean, you
persons,
disagree, and you
one
can
being.
say that it's
Well,
not
no,
there.
well, give me a passage that supports the doctrine. Give me one author teaching the Trinity to a group.
One author teaching
Yeah.
the Trinity?
Yeah, who
I would
explains
say
it?
all of the authors.
No. Give me one author who describes the Trinity in the way you understand the nature of God.
Yeah, so let's take Great Commission, which I'm sure you've got something. But how do you deal with the Great Commission?
That's a triadic phrase. It's not a Trinity. Again,
Yeah, that's not the Trinity. That there's a Father, a Son, and the Holy Spirit doesn't mean that there's the Trinity as you understand it.
So your issue there is one in being, right? You're
Yeah,
saying
three
there's
persons.
actually more. There's more to the
Okay.
Trinity than simply a
so
triad.
at least the Great Commission establishes at least three divine beings,
No,
right?
It just
has,
establishes
on its own, the baptismal form in Matthew 28 is a triad. It doesn't even
Right.
address whether or not the Holy Spirit's a person. It doesn't deal with Christology, like did Christ pre-exist? Is he consubstantial with the Father? These are like all the essential building blocks for the uppercase T Trinity. They're
Okay,
engaging
so
in equivocation
the
by
problem.
just being a triad.
So the problem with what you're doing is you're concluding that predicated on the language of a specific text that a
Using that logic,
theology
faith, hope,
comes
and
out.
Trinity
Yeah.
is a
no,
Trinity as well.
I'm trying to go slow. I'm trying not to go, say, here's a proof text. I'm trying to go slow.
No.
Well, you're the one who said
What? I'm
the
asking
Trinity is in
for
the New Testament.
I'm
Well,
asking
I
for a
mean-
text, not
Yeah.
a mishmash of cherry-picked passages that you think formulate the Trinity. I'm asking for Paul teaching it. I'm asking for Peter teaching it. I'm asking for somebody teaching it. Does
Sure,
Matthew
sure.
teach it?
Yeah. Okay. So you're asking, is there ever one clear text that gives us a Nicene understanding of Trinity?
I'll take a
Where-
pericope.
Like
Yeah.
you want a singular text, and that's
What
the
you
only
said-
way you would accept that.
So
Not a
so
singular text. Just
Like I'm just trying to understand the question.
no, yeah. So look at it this way. Paul writes a letter to a group,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Where does he explain the Trinity to that group in a way that they would understand it the way that it was later codified in the creeds? Where does that exist? Because here's the problem. If you've got pagan converts to Christianity, you've got Hebrew converts to Christianity, are they entering Christianity with this understanding that Jesus is teaching that he is the God of Israel, that he has a father and a God, and that they are consubstantially one being?
Mhm.
And if they're not just knowing that, where is it explicated or explained anywhere in the biblical text?
So to make sure that I understand the parameters of the question, you are
Oh, and
required.
not to be difficult, but if we just like end after this, might be
I know
after
we
one
said
second.
that several times.
That's fine.
It's always so hard to find an ending place.
We can wrap up on this one.
Yeah, and undoubtedly there will be cans of worms. To understand the parameters of the questions, you're seeking a singular passage, or you're okay with drawing truths from multiple passages? I want to make sure I'm understanding your requirements. I'm trying to go slow. I'm trying not to go, say, here's a proof text. I'm trying to go slow.
No.
Well, you're the one who said
What? I'm
the
asking
Trinity is in the
for-
New Testament.
I'm asking for a text, not
Yeah.
not a mishmash of cherry-picked passages that you think formulate the Trinity. I'm asking for Paul teaching it. I'm asking for Peter teaching it. I'm asking for somebody teaching it. Does
Sure,
Matthew
sure.
teach it?
Yeah. Okay. So you're asking, is there ever one clear text that gives us a Nicene understanding of Trinity?
I'll take a
Where-
pericope. When you're drawing truths from multiple passages, that's informed by a hermeneutic, and again, this is why
I mean, that's a
asked-
presupposition on your part.
everyone has hermeneutics here.
No,
everyone
your
has-
presupposition is that your presupposition, or at least if I'm understanding, what you're saying is that, well, let me ask it this way to make sure I'm trying to get where you're coming from. Is it possible to arrive at a doctrinal truth using multiple passages.
Sure.
Okay,
But
so
no, I'm just saying, like, but at the same time, the passages and the interpretation one heist upon them is based on certain a priori assumptions. Here, you're accepting some Nicene Constantinopian Christianity, and
coming at it from a blank slate as much as that's
no
possible.
such thing.
with a
Every
human.
interpretation is theory laden. I don't believe there's such thing as a blank slate.
But even as a blank slate, let's take blank slate. I read the New
like
Testament.
you presented an impossible situation for anyone.
No. Even if, like, say, blank slate, I open the New Testament and I
Yes.
start reading about Jesus, and he has a father, and
Yep.
it talks about a God exalting him, and him going up to his father, and him receiving the glory that he had with his father,
And
all that
as
stuff.
a god as
Yeah,
well.
and so I start reading all that, and at the end of it, I'm like, oh, Trinity.
Okay, so if you'll allow me, I'm trying to go piece by piece, go slow about it. So what definitively are we relying on to inform those things? A singular thing, multiple things. You're relying on multiple statements from Jesus, okay? You're holding those things in tension, right? So you have simultaneously Jesus, actually, let me ask to make sure I'm understanding we're working from the same foundation. You believe that Jesus has a human nature and a divine nature?
We would not believe in the hypostatic union because we don't
That's a
believe that there is a
complicated
distinction.
question.
We believe that he's qualitatively different than us two. This ultimately goes back to the fact that we don't believe in creation out of nothing.
Yeah, we don't believe in the hypostatic union. So that's the answer to your question.
Okay, so
just maybe one question on your understanding, say the New Testament. Do you believe that the person of Jesus, not simply his human nature, but the person of Jesus actually has a God, not simply a father above him?
Has a God
above him?
And
maybe if we could just like end on this, but yeah.
I tell you, you guys haven't not given me at all the opportunity to address what you're saying. Like, yeah,
we've been addressing.
We can meet again. We can meet again. We can meet again another time, but.
I just like truthfully, I don't feel like I've been given a fair opportunity here. Every time I ask a clarifying question, so I'm trying to work with what you're saying. Okay, so if we could just work slowly for a minute. Do you believe that Jesus in the Gospels is teaching that he is of the same sort of divinity as the Father?
Depending on which gospel you read, but
generally speaking, between the four Gospels.
The gospel author of John seems to have some understanding that he's divine.
Well, that's not necessarily the same thing.
It's not.
Yeah, so you would say in the synoptics, there's no indication from Jesus that
this would probably be a better question to Robert. I have a different perspective on the biblical text than Robert does.
Yeah.
Again, this kind of goes back.
He holds in much higher regard than I do.
Because for the Trinity, it's not simply to say Jesus is divine or he pre-existed. It's the issue of consubstantiality.
I'm trying to. So
yes or no? Yes or no? The divinity of Christ in the Trinity is not simply Christ is divine; he's consubstantial with the Father.
Is Jesus giving indications of a substance higher than humanity?
Is Jesus okay? Does the New Testament texts reflect a perspective that Jesus is not a human, but a divinized being? Sure.
Okay, so working from that, now you have a divinized being. Mm-hmm. You also have him referring to the Father, who is a divinized being.
So that's two.
Okay. That's two. You recognize the Godhead, so I want to just save time. We're comfortable with recognizing a third divinized being.
Yeah, I do so through modern revelation, but okay.
You don't find that in the New Testament text? Robert, do you
personally
find
don't,
that in
but
the New Testament text?
It's the personhood of the Holy Spirit's not as explicit as the Father and
Yeah.
the Son.
Okay, but generally we're comfortable with three divine beings.
Sure, but if you're going to be saying like a triad, that does not make a Trinity. There's more to the Trinity than a triad, and you can
Yeah.
you can groan as all you want, but again, the Trinity
Yeah.
is not something a
There,
triad.
if
There's
if
like
you're
a
saying if you're
consubstantiality, for
saying
instance,
the New Testament reflects that there are three divine beings, okay, now how do you get co-substantiality out of that?
Yeah. So now we're arriving at why is it not polytheism, but why is it still monotheism?
because
It's
the
not.
Father is the
That's
source of the divinity of the Son.
because your understanding of monotheism is not found in the biblical text. That's the problem. You're reading into the text a version of monotheism that doesn't exist. It's absent. It's not found in their worldview.
Okay. So I'm trying to we're again, we're trying to work slowly. Like I feel that you guys are rushing to address things, or you're rushing to ask
No,
questions.
only because Robert needs to go. That's the
I
only reason I'm
understand, but
trying
what
to
the
hurry is.
reflection is that you're not allowing me to speak. Like
No,
you're
no,
not.
no.
I think anyone who actually watches this would actually say
You're taking a while
I'm-
to speak, because the problem with it is that from my perspective, you're skirting the issue. You're trying
I'm
to
not
do what
scurrying,
most people
guys.
wait.
I'm
Most
just
people
trying to
do.
go slow.
This is the formula most people do, and they do it slow because they think I'm stupid. But it's
I'm not
there's
thinking you're stupid.
wait, no.
But there's
There's
points
a
of contention that
there's
are
a
critical.
father.
That's
There's
important
a
that we
father
understand.
who's divine, a son who's divine, a Holy
Yeah.
Ghost who's divine. There's three beings, but the Hebrew Bible says there's only one God, so Trinity.
Okay, so
That's what they always say. And if that's where you were going with that, if you're going somewhere other than that, where? Were you going somewhere other than that? Was that your conclusion, or were you going to make another conclusion?
hey man, like real talk. Okay, things are
Yeah.
getting a little heated. Okay.
No, I'm not heated. And I apologize if I appear that way. I'm not heated at all.
But I mean, that's my perception. Things are getting a little heated, or you guys are frustrated, and I get
I'm
it.
not, yeah.
Okay. So the reason I go slow is not because I think you're stupid.
Oh,
Like
I know it's not. Yeah, I think that we all accurately recognize each other's intelligence. We're fine. I'm
Okay,
not saying that. What I'm saying is that you're saying three divine beings. Okay, we're there. Now where?
Okay. So if we say three divine beings, is the understanding of the Israelites of the New Testament as well, of both Old Testament and New Testament throughout, is there an understanding of a singular God? And you're
No.
going to say no.
No, they did not hold a strict monotheism, and that's generally accepted now by academic scholarship and exegetes.
And I reject that. Like I reject that that's you're presenting that as though that's a conclusive statement. Yes, the scholars agree, but they don't.
Yes, it's the overwhelming consensus of scholars. It's
absolutely
it's
not.
so
I would
yeah.
suggest you actually read the scholarship. It's
Yeah,
overwhelming.
it's
guys,
overwhelming.
I
in this
have a
issue.
master's degree. I'm not, somebody who's unfamiliar with, scholarship on the topic.
Okay,
Like,
so you're familiar with the
Yeah,
scholarship
and Robert has a couple master's degree. And
I'm just saying it.
So what?
It's an unfair statement for you to present it as the overwhelming consensus
No,
is
what I'm saying
not
is
monotheism.
Even
Like,
those
that's
who believe it's
unfair to
strict monotheism would
categorize
agree
that
with
as
that
that.
statement.
Because it's you're using a lot of words to use the same argument that's erroneously used by other people who try to support the Trinity, namely Jesus is God, the Father is God, the Holy Ghost is God, and as the Hebrew Bible says, there's only one God, except that it doesn't. And that formulation of the divine realm is not found anywhere.
Actually,
Okay, so
let me just ask this because you said you're familiar with the scholarship. How do you interpret Deuteronomy 32 from the Dead Sea Scrolls?
from the Dead Sea Scrolls, you're saying that
No. You said you're familiar with the scholarship and you dismiss me what I said. So this is like the very first thing to discuss when it comes to say the divine counsel and the nature of God. How do you interpret the textual changes in Deuteronomy 32 from the Dead Sea Scrolls? The earliest text of Deuteronomy 32 we have.
I don't feel like. Okay. Am I allowed to speak?
Go ahead.
Okay, because I say three words, you cut me off. Seriously. So no, I am not familiar with the reading of Deuteronomy 32 from the Dead Sea Scrolls.
It's
Guys,
overwhelming
I
in this
have a
issue.
master's degree. I'm not, somebody who's unfamiliar with, scholarship on the topic.
Okay, so
So no, I am not familiar with the reading of Deuteronomy 32 from the Dead Sea Scrolls.
okay, but earlier you just dismissed me when I said the majority of scholarship would agree with my assessment. And by the way, even critics of that perspective would agree it's a minority position these days. And one of the main texts, in fact, the text alongside Psalm 82, is actually this text from Deuteronomy 32. So I'll ask the question, and maybe we could end here. Have you actually read the scholarship on, say, the nature of God in the Old Testament or the divine counsel and how that seeped into, say, the New Testament era?
Yeah, so the point that I'm rejecting for you is that the consensus is what you say.
It is the consensus. Even critics of the conservative position say it is a minority position.
Okay. I think there's a difference
Well,
between
and here, Austin, I just would be real careful about, I have a master's degree, so I understand when
No.
when earlier on you
don't put the
also
word in
said,
my mouth that
well,
I'm
when
presenting.
you,
No.
you
This
said,
is super important because you're
you
presenting
said,
it as though I'm saying
I've
I'm a
read the
learned,
scholarship.
intelligent man.
No. It's
Guys,
overwhelming
I
in this
have a
issue.
master's degree. I'm not, somebody who's unfamiliar with, scholarship on the topic.
Okay, so
I'm
You said I've
saying,
read your, well, so like bringing up a degree, I don't know what your point was other than that. If you had one, that's fine. But
no, the
but
point is
it's
that
probably
you're,
not a smart thing to bring it up and then have
Dude.
used Revelation 22, 18, and 19 to support Sola Scriptura.
Gosh, man, you guys are just like interesting in the way that you're like real talk, not like approaching, things in a like I seriously, I genuinely feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've consistently throughout this conversation tried to ask you guys what you're saying. I've consistently tried to make sure I'm understanding clearly what you're saying. I'm not putting words in your mouth, okay? And consistently, you've made categorical statements about me, like in the way that I'm presenting myself. Like, I don't know if you recognize that.
I
Like,
don't. But
okay.
preach, brother.
I mean, like genuinely, I'm just a dude
I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude.
trying to understand your position. Like,
Look at it this way. That's a difficult position to now make once you've said, hey guys, I have a master's degree. Because my point would be is, why does that matter? What relevance does that have? You either understand or you don't. You either know or you don't. You can explicate your position or you can't. It doesn't really matter what your educational background is. It's completely and wholly irrelevant. All we're saying is that I am shocked that you're unaware of the literature regarding the nature of the biblical text with respect to monotheism. It's just, it's an odd thing. Usually I get that kind of a position from people who've literally never read the Bible. Or if they've read the Bible, they've never done any study on it. They've never engaged in any kind of academic study. But you're a pastor.
you haven't given me enough chance to even talk to like hear what I'm saying.
Well, okay, so but what I'm saying is you were taking forever to get to one God, two God, three God, but one God. I just jumped the gun on you because you were taking forever to say it.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
your
sorry I
position,
go
right?
slow. Hey, I'm
That's
sorry.
your position, right?
No, it's
Is that
not.
your position?
No, it's not the
Okay,
entire.
then is there a passage somewhere that explains
Gosh.
that?
Hey, I'm not going to be the last person that you talk to.
No, you're not.
No, but you really need to change
And you're not the first.
I understand that. Your manner by which you're going over this is not.
Look, I don't need politeness lessons from.
That's not what I'm trying to give you.
Yeah, I don't need politeness lessons.
Not what I'm trying to give you.
The idea, the problem that you're actually emotional about this is irrelevant to me. I don't. It's
Okay.
either you can do and perform and explain, or you can't. And this like, you guys are attacking me and I'm getting sad and you're not letting me speak. We have let you speak significantly. That you're taking forever to get your words out.
Yeah.
Well, Robert has to go. I'd love to meet with you again. We'll give you the floor.
Dude, if you go back and review
But
the footage of
we've
the last
put it
20
we've put a
minutes,
pin.
oh
We've
my
put a pin. We'll put a pin in the Trinity passage. Find the Trinity passage in the New Testament, and we'll meet again. Just reach out to the missionaries. But it was nice meeting you, Austin.
seriously,
Have a
like
good one.
that's
He's got to go. So do I.
okay, but
All
you
right.
just have not given me even 2 seconds to talk in the last
You've
15
had plenty of time, and like you said, for us to review this.
You're
I think anyone who watches this will actually say, like, you've had a fair
you're
shake.
circling so much. Because from my perspective, you are pulling up sources, cherry-picked sources out of LDS sources to accomplish. I know what objectives you're trying to accomplish. I just don't care about them. The point is that I'm trying to get to what's the actual concern that you had. And
That's
it
what I'm
looked
trying
like,
to ask.
yeah, and your concern was that there wasn't really a great apostasy because people believed in Jesus.
I'm trying to understand, like, when you say there's a great apostasy, what do you mean in the
We
sense
said
of,
we explained it.
We
Yeah,
already
we
went
explained
down
it.
this route.
We went to
Yeah,
exhaustively.
I'm not re-asking the question. That was me
Right.
explaining what the question was. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm so sorry that I don't speak as fast as you would like for me to. Okay.
It's not even that.
Okay. The reason that I go slowly, carefully, point by point is because I think we can agree that in the conversations that we've had with people of other faiths, it's an ineffective strategy for everyone involved to list 10 points at once and then later go back and try to, rehash each point because, all of a sudden you're down 18 rabbit trails. The reason that I go slow is so that when we find a point of contention, we try to understand what that point of contention is. It's not because I doubt you guys in terms of your ability to understand the argument. It's so that I don't get lost of where the contention arose. Simply that. So in terms of, and I get you've talked to a lot of guys probably smarter than me, definitely smarter than me, more well-read than me. I get it. And you've heard a lot of arguments time and time again. I get it. But I'm the first time I'm hearing it from you. And that's why I want to hear what you have to say.
You're a guy that should probably do a lot more reading before you start talking to guys like us, and especially when you start asking missionaries who don't know. Do more reading. That's why I asked you if you've ever read the Book of Mormon. Read the Book of Mormon. Read the Doctrine and Covenants. Like, read them. You're a smart guy. You're studied. You have a master's degree. You have the capacity to learn.
And,
right? I haven't learned what I've learned, and Robert didn't learn what he learned from asking people.
Okay. So there's no value in me asking you questions?
Apparently not.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you find that there's no value in me asking you questions and us having a conversation, then I don't really, I guess this would be our
Well,
final conversation.
no, because here's the issue, Austin. When you say, I disagree with the overwhelming academic consensus on a certain issue, and then say, but I've never studied that and I don't know this, that's a problem. That means that the actual problem we're having is there's a disparity in knowledge. And when there's such a disparity in knowledge with respect to something like that, unless you close that gap, we can't have productive conversations. I have these all the time where it's like I'm talking to somebody who's never read the Bible. And it's like, well, I didn't know it said that. I didn't know it said that. It makes the conversation tedious and almost useless because they're like, I reject everything you say. And I'm like, based on what? Well, based on it's not what I wanted to hear.
Okay.
And that's a problem.
Did you find that that was what I was saying, that I didn't want to hear your answer, so I reject it?
No, what I'm hearing is that I asked you for a specific passage, or as Robert said, a pericope from the New Testament that explains the Trinity. And instead, we tried to get this, can we agree on certain things that lead us to the conclusion of the Trinity? And the reality of it is no, we can't.
So, and me trying to understand your point of contestation there is that the argument that I'm formulating there, you're saying is an invalid argument?
Yes.
Okay, on what grounds?
It's invalid to sit and say, I have presupposed something about the entirety of the biblical text, namely that ancient Israel was monotheistic. Predicated on that, I find three gods represented in the New Testament, so Trinity.
Okay. So you're saying that there's a presupposition that I have
Right,
that Israel is monotheistic.
right. And
Okay.
that presupposition is incorrect.
And so your position is that Israel is not monotheistic in
They're
worship?
clearly not in the text.
Okay.
They're
And
clearly
you-
not. They're worshiping other gods. They're acknowledging the existence of other gods.
Yeah,
They're
so
betraying the God of their
Other
nation by
gods
worshiping the
exist.
gods of other nations. How
So-
could they be monotheistic?
okay, so you're saying that their actions represent that they're trading Yahweh for a different God.
That's exactly what they're doing.
I agree, they do.
And
But does
also that the
that-
biblical authors affirm the ontological existence of other gods.
Okay, and that's a very different statement from the one that you were just making, right?
They're
Like-
not mutually incompatible with one another.
No, I would affirm that they're not incompatible, but your statement that they're worshiping other gods doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean that ontologically these other gods exist and have the
No,
same
it
kind of
doesn't.
divinity as Yahweh, right?
No, it doesn't.
So that's me trying to understand, is your position that the Old Testament teaches and prescribes a divinity to these other gods that are worshipped that is in essence the same
Because
kind of divinity?
They're identified in other texts as actually existing, and they're identified in other texts as the Israelites worshiping them. Taken together, so what Robert says was correct and what I said was correct. It's both. It's both and, not either or.
Okay, so hey, I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding. Your position is that if I go and I evaluate the Old Testament, I will find that the Old Testament teaches the simultaneous worship of the Israelites of other gods, as well as the ontological existence of those other gods, and that they are equal in capabilities of divinity as Yahweh.
That's an additional qualifier.
Okay. Do you disagree with that qualifier?
Well, because the perspective on Israel is that their God is the greater God, the better God, the higher God.
So, do you think that is their understanding? Like that
It's their
Yahweh?
belief.
Okay.
My
So
God can beat up your God.
Yeah.
We see that with the contest in Elijah and Kings.
Okay.
My
But
God can beat up your God. This is my God's land. Get out of here.
yeah, and I'm with you on that. But are we saying then that the Old Testament's intention is for us to understand that here's eternal Father?
The Old Testament doesn't have an intention. The individual's authors had purposes in writing.
So there's no unity in Revelation? I don't understand what you mean by that statement.
I know. We need to stop tonight.
Okay.
So we'll see you, Austin.
You guys have a good night.
You
You do.